Hello there, it's Steve here, and as I've said in the module notes, I'm going to give you a bit of a blurb about my own framework for the practice of school-based chaplaincy. And I guess really for me, my framework is a framework of youth work in the context of school-based chaplaincy. I've done a lot of youth work stuff over the last 28 years or something, and worked in a lot of contexts, as a volunteer youth group leader. I've worked on camps and holiday programs for Scripture Union. I've worked as a social worker with young people, a chaplain with young people, and in the church with young people. So really my framework's about youth work, but in terms of thinking about this particular subject, I'll be reflecting on how all of that fits in with how I've come to understand school-based chaplaincy. And really, since I've been working as a chaplain, I've spent a lot of time in the Scripture Union Brisbane office, helping with policy development and training for chaplains as well. So I guess I've been thinking about the chaplaincy context from that point of view as well. So my framework is about youth work, but I'll be thinking particularly about the context of chaplaincy, because that's what this subject is all about. So, as we've seen over the modules, the framework model starts with the foundational kind of layer of you as in us, we, me. We are the main instruments through which our youth work is practiced, so it's really important for us to get a handle on who we are and where we've come from and what we bring and where we think it's all heading in our practice. So I'm just going to start in this little video just talking a bit about who am I and how does that impact upon my practice of youth work, particularly in school-based chaplaincy. So the three things we've particularly talked about the you part of our framework is, who am I in terms of my journey into youth work, and in particular school-based chaplaincy. What are the things that I bring, and my gifts, abilities, passions, what have I brought into this kind of role? And my worldview, how do I see the world, what's important about how I answer some of those big questions in life, and how it impacts upon myself as a practicing chaplain. Okay, so that's the three things I want to talk about. So it's initially just telling a bit of, about my story and the things that I think are relevant in my frameworks model. The first thing I'd probably say is, born at an early age, born from year dot, I would say that I had a kind of an appreciation of youth work thrust upon me in my family. I was a lovely Christian family, and we had a lot to do with youth work, even as just little tiny kids. My mum and dad used to always joke that we were going on Christian youth camps when when both of us, my brother and I, were in my mum's tummy. So they'd be leading camps, and we grew up Christian camps, and it was a very big part of our life. We had this very positive association between people and fun and activity and friendliness and stuff that was associated with youth work and kind of our Christian experience of life. And also we were involved in Sunday schools and youth groups, both in primary school and high school, that were just great. So in our family we had not only a Christian upbringing, but a lot of modelling and a lot of great experience of youth work. So in some ways I look back at that and think it's not surprising in some way I got into youth work. So that was pretty significant, and I was involved in youth work. So as a teenager, I was from 14. I was helping to lead camps, and I was a leader in church in the little kids youth group. That was something that I could really see myself getting more involved in the future. Then something kind of happened to me which was interesting. At 16, I went to India on a missions trip that was based around volleyball. I was pretty good at volleyball when I was young. People wouldn't know to look at me today, but 40 kilos ago, 20-something years ago, I was pretty good. And so I got invited to go on this missions trip with the volleyball team to India, and that was just great. To get an opportunity to kind of combine a whole lot of passions and those kind of things. But one of the unintended consequences, I guess, unforeseen consequences of that experience was that my experience of engaging with poverty was such that I really came back a bit shell-shocked, and one of the areas I became shell-shocked with my faith in God, and I had a kind of sense that maybe God wasn't real, or that God didn't care, or that God wasn't powerful, or whatever. But I just had a sense that if this massive kind of wrongness was going on in the world, that maybe God just really wasn't all that I had thought him to be. And so there was a sense I felt like I hadn't been really well prepared, or I wasn't really well prepared theologically to wrestle with that really powerful experience of poverty. And so the next little while for me was quite difficult then in terms of my faith. I struggled a bit with God and knowing what to do, and kind of distanced myself a bit from those kind of things. But one of the things that happened is that in the next little bit of time was I went to uni, I finished school, went to uni and did my social work degree. And in social work I found some of the answers to things that I hadn't found in religion and spirituality, as a result of the questions I was asking from my user experience. So I found out about disadvantage in the poor and the marginalised, and how social work was all about empowering people to overcome disadvantage and to help them access the good things that society and life had to offer. And that was really good for me. I thought, this is great. This is I'm not going to waste my time on religion kind of thing. I'm going to really put my teeth into this, and it's going to be great. I'm going to base my life on that. I can still be a good guy and still kind of bring a lot of my values and goodness and righteousness and justice, those kind of things with me that I had grown up with, and still be the same kind of person. But I can base my life on something a bit more solid. And that was kind of an important little phase for me. But one of the things that happened at uni was that there was Christians doing social work, and we had these conversations all the time about God and social work and all that kind of stuff. And someone gave me a book called Can You Hear the Heartbeat? It was written by a fellow by the name of Dave Andrews, who was a tutor in the social work department at the time. And he was a Christian guy, and he basically was telling the story of Jesus as really kind of the ultimate social worker to some degree. Beyond that, the God of the Bible who is interested in restoring all things, every area of life and living, and had a particular interest in looking after the marginalised and the poor. And I thought, I didn't really know this. My kind of upbringing had never really touched on the importance of this aspect, this central plank I've come to believe since of what God's trying to do in the world and who God is and all that kind of thing. So in a sense, I got back onto a pathway of rediscovery of God, and I was able to integrate a lot of the great things I'd experienced in my childhood and learnt in my childhood with what I was doing in social work, but in a sense a bit of a new theological perspective on all of those things. And that was kind of just in my early 20s, and so really at 41 now, that kind of time was quite formative for me. It's the kind of Christian ideas that I was developing at that time have really become the basis of my worldview. So this whole idea of Christian holism and shalom, that God is, while he is interested in seeing people respond personally to him, that his agenda is bigger and broader than that. He's actually looking for a cosmic kind of restoration. That, as the Bible says, he's reconciling all things, and that means all things. Everything is God has a vision for, and wow, I was like, this is great. I can really build a life on that. They really had that sense of that firm kind of foundation, that solid rock kind of foundation. I thought, yeah, that's good. I can do some stuff with that. And so that was really great. So that was kind of formative, and then really from then on I started exploring what that meant in social work, and a few social work jobs, working with young people who are homeless. I was kind of thinking, what is it that I'm doing here as a Christian? So I used to think about that and explore that and talk with people about that. And then after 6 years or so of that, I did a little bit of chaplaincy, and so I was able to bring some of those ideas into that role, and then started to explore what does that mean here, being this kind of identified Christian person in this community. What does that mean, not just being the social worker, and trying to work out how the different context influenced what it was that I believed and what I valued and what I was trying to express in my life through my relationship and understanding of God. So so that's kind of the main part of the journey. So many things have kind of happened since, but I might kind of tackle that stuff in some of the other little segments, because I wanted to focus on those other two areas in the U section. That gives you a bit of an idea of my journey, and also starts to give you a bit of an idea of my worldview. So if I was going to describe my worldview, I'd describe it as a Christian holism, I suppose, and I'd kind of contrast that with a Christian dualism. Without going into all the nitty-gritties of that, it really comes back to some of the things I said before, that I really believe that God is above and over all things, and that he has a beautiful vision for how he wants everything to be. So me, you, our relationships, the world, the environment, all of it, and that he's working towards the restoration of that vision. You contrast that a bit with maybe a narrower view of Christianity, which might say, God is just interested in saving souls, or the main process is just evangelism, where people are just responding to God individually. I think God isn't trying to do all those things, and I'm not trying to downgrade that, but I'm trying to lift up, I guess, that God actually wants to see this world be a better place, and people living this life really well, and to have enough to eat, and to be well educated, to be employed, and to be not feeling depressed and anxious, and certainly not to be doing things like self-harming themselves. He has this vision for wellness and wholeness and happiness, and in all things. And I think that if that's what God's on about, then I want to have that kind of commitment to those things too. So it's very important, I think, that that my journey has very much been influenced my worldview, which is something that we've talked a bit about in this course. So the other part of this journey, this section on you, is what do you bring? Who are you? The interesting thing for me is that, having been a youth worker for almost 30 years in different kind of contexts, I've actually been quite a few different people over that time. As I've grown up, I've had different personalities, almost different strengths in my 20s and 30s and now 40s. I've had different kind of situations where I was single, and then I got married, and then I've got 2 little boys, and all those kind of things have changed me. So I think at different times I've brought different things. In those 30 years I've had different levels of experience and knowledge and things like that. So it's kind of hard for me to think what I have brought into youth group. But personality traits, I think I'm a people person. I think I try to be funny, but I don't know if I'm really funny, but I certainly like fun. I'm always trying to cause a bit of trouble some way here and there, a bit of mischief, and try and keep people laughing and happy and moving on. I think that's good. So I think I relate well to people. I think that's always served me well as a natural kind of ability or gift or something, character trait. Even before doing social work, I had a heart for those who were the poor or marginalised or on the edge, and I think that I brought in and then learned a lot about that, and that's been really enhanced mightily by the training that I've done. I like the outdoors and activity and stuff, and I've kind of brought that, sport coaching into chaplaincy, and we used to take kids in chaplaincy on adventure outdoor camps and stuff, bushwalking and ropes courses and these things, and kind of reflection of some of my personal interests in forward driving and camping and that kind of stuff. I think in some ways I've always been a critical thinker. I think I've always asked questions about Christianity and faith, and I've never kind of just settled for the answers that people. I think I'm naturally inquisitive in that sense, and I try not to be critical, but I try and offer a critique if you can understand the difference there. And I brought that into my youth work all the time. So all the time I think that I've been doing youth work, I've been bringing a questioning, and what is this all about, and how does this fit, and almost without knowing frameworks at one stage, I suppose I was kind of always developing a framework. So I think that's been an important part of what I brought to chaplaincy. So when I became a chaplain, I was really thinking through a lot of these things and really thinking about what it means to be doing this role in this place, and I was very considered and deliberate about the things that I did. Not that I did everything right, but I certainly was thinking about what I was doing. And when I think about myself today, almost 28 years or something down the track, then I kind of look at thinking about the context I'm in now, where largely I'm doing policy development and kind of training. Then I kind of see that a lot of those things are still serving me well now. It's still important to be good with people and have a bit of fun, particularly if you're doing some stuff up front. It's good to have a heart for those that are on the edge and kind of remember that, even if you're just dealing with students who are youth workers, and they may be doing that yourself, and I might not be doing that so much, but to be mindful of that. And I think the whole critical thinker thing is very, very useful in what I'm doing now, and continue to think through what it means to be a youth worker and help other people. I think that's really so that's a bit about me, which means that might or might not, I hope it does, help you think through what the you part of your framework is. So I'll leave that there. That's probably enough for this one.